Hey guys, before I start this story, I need you to understand something. I never believed in ghosts. Like seriously, I was that guy who'd laugh at horror movies and point out how fake everything looked. I worked as a travel blogger, staying at different hotels every week, and I'd seen my fair share of haunted places. But what happened last month at the Silver Pine Hotel, it changed everything. Let me start from the beginning. It was a pretty normal Tuesday evening. I just landed in this small town called Millbrook for a writing assignment. Nothing special about it. Just another quiet town with old buildings and even older stories. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, you know? I remember checking my phone as I drove into town. 6:43 p.m. The sun was already setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. My editor had booked me into this historic hotel, the Silver Pine. It was this massive Victorian-style building, probably from the 1800s, with those typical fancy windows and intricate woodwork. The kind of place that usually makes for great content for my blog. The funny thing is, everything felt so normal. The hotel's front desk lady, Sarah, I remember her name because she had this really unique name tag with little pine trees drawn on it. She was super friendly. Mid-50s, glasses, that warm grandmotherly smile. "Welcome to the Silver Pine, Mr. Parker. We've got you in room 408. It's one of our best rooms. Right up on the 4th floor with a beautiful view of the town square." I mean, looking back now, maybe I should have noticed how her smile tightened a bit when she mentioned the room number. Or how the bellhop who was nearby suddenly became very interested in reorganizing the already perfectly arranged brochures. But you know how it is, when you're tired from a long drive, you don't really pick up on these little things. The lobby was exactly what you'd expect from a historic hotel. Dark wood everywhere. Those fancy old chandeliers, thick carpets that probably cost more than my car. The air had that distinct old hotel smell, like a mixture of wood polish and those little potpourri sachets they put everywhere. There was even a fireplace with a few comfortable-looking armchairs around it. Very cozy, very Instagram-worthy. I remember thinking this would make for a great article. Historic charm meets modern comfort or something like that. You know, the usual travel blog stuff. I even started taking mental notes about the vintage photographs lining the walls as I followed Sarah to the elevator. Now, this is where things started getting, well, not exactly weird, but just slightly off. The elevator was one of those old-fashioned ones with the metal grate you have to pull across manually. As we got in, Sarah pressed the button for the 4th floor, and I swear, I know this sounds stupid now, but I swear the temperature dropped a few degrees. I actually remember rubbing my arms and thinking I should have kept my jacket on instead of packing it in my suitcase. The elevator ride was quiet. Too quiet, maybe? You know, that awkward silence that makes you want to say something. Anything? Sarah, who'd been chatty downstairs, just stared at the floor numbers. 1, 2, 3. Each floor indicator seemed louder than it should have been. When we reached the 4th floor, Sarah practically rushed out. I had to speed walk to keep up with her as she led me down the hallway. The carpet here was different, darker, with this intricate pattern that seemed to shift if you looked at it too long. The walls were lined with more old photographs, but these were different. Instead of the usual happy family photos or landscape shots, these were all of the hotel itself, taken at different times throughout its history. Room 408 was at the end of the hall. Just a normal hotel room door, right? Dark wood, brass numbers, one of those card key slots. Sarah handed me my key card, and I noticed her hand trembled slightly. "Enjoy your stay, Mr. Parker," she said quickly. "If you need anything, just dial 0 for the front desk. We have someone there 24/7. And then she was gone, walking away so fast her heels practically echoed down the hall. At that moment, standing alone in that long hallway, I felt this weird urge to call after her, to ask, I don't know what, but I didn't. Instead, I slid my key card into the slot, watched the little light turn green, and pushed open the door to room 408. If I'd known what was waiting for me inside, I would have turned around right then and checked into the Holiday Inn down the street. But how could I have known? It looked like any other hotel room, at least at first. The first thing that hit me when I entered room 408 was how normal it looked. King-sized bed with crisp white sheets, a desk by the window, standard hotel artwork on the walls. But something felt off about the air. It was heavy, like right before a thunderstorm. I remember thinking my sinuses were acting up because my ears felt slightly pressured. I started my usual routine, throwing my laptop on the desk, unpacking some clothes, checking the bathroom to see if the water pressure was decent. Everything seemed fine, except for this weird thing with my phone. The battery was at 94% when I entered the room, but within minutes it dropped to 47%. I plugged it in, but it wouldn't charge, just kept dropping. Around 8 p.m., I decided to grab dinner at the hotel restaurant downstairs. But when I tried to pull the door handle, guys, I'm not making this up, it was ice cold, like frost on your car window cold, in a heated hotel room. I actually pulled my hand back in shock. The door opened normally though, and I headed down. The restaurant was almost empty, just an elderly couple in one corner and a businessman typing on his laptop at the bar. I sat down, ordered a burger, and tried to work on my article. That's when I first noticed the whispers. You know when you're in a public place and you can hear people talking, but can't make out what they're saying? It was like that, except I was sitting alone, and the nearest people were at least 30 feet away. These whispers seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I kept looking around, but couldn't spot the source. The waiter, his name tag said, Mike, must have noticed something was off because he asked if everything was okay. When I mentioned the whispers, his face went pale. He quickly mumbled something about the building's old ventilation system and practically ran back to the kitchen. I couldn't finish my food. The burger tasted fine, but every bite felt wrong somehow, like my body was trying to warn me about something. I decided to head back to my room, thinking maybe I was just tired from the drive. The elevator ride back up was strange. The lights flickered the whole time, and that cold feeling from earlier came back stronger. When I reached the 4th floor, I swear I saw someone standing at the end of the hallway, just a dark figure, completely still. But when I blinked, there was no one there. Back in room 408, things got weirder. The TV turned on by itself, just static at first, but then... Look, I know this sounds crazy, but I swear I could see shapes moving in the static. Not just random patterns, but actual figures like shadows of people walking back and forth. I tried to call the front desk, but when I picked up the phone, all I could hear was that same whispering from the restaurant, only louder now, more urgent. And then I heard something that made my blood run cold. The whispers coming through the phone. They were saying my name. Not just saying it, they were chanting it over and over. Parker, Parker, Parker. I slammed the phone down so hard I'm surprised it didn't break. My hands were shaking, and I could feel sweat running down my back despite how cold the room had become. That's when the knocking started. At first, it was subtle, just light taps on the wall behind the bed. I tried to convince myself it was just the pipes or maybe someone in the next room. But then the knocking moved. It went across the wall, then to the bathroom door, then to the main door like something was circling the room. And it kept getting louder. Nervous swallow. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but remember how I told you about the battery issues? Yeah, it was completely dead now. My laptop wouldn't turn on either. I was starting to feel trapped, and that's when things got really intense. The bathroom door slowly creaked open. Now, I know what you're thinking. Parker, why didn't you just run? Trust me, I wanted to, but it was like my feet were glued to the floor. You know that feeling in nightmares where you want to move but can't? It was exactly like that. Steam started pouring out of the bathroom. Not normal shower steam, this was thick, almost opaque, and it moved wrong, like it had a purpose. It curled around the furniture, crawled up the walls, and started forming shapes. I'm not talking about random patterns, I mean actual human-like figures. The temperature dropped so low I could see my breath. The whispers that had been coming through the phone were now all around me, dozens of voices overlapping. Some sounded angry, others were crying, and a few were laughing. The kind of laugh that makes your skin crawl. I managed to break free from whatever was holding me in place and ran to the door. But when I threw it open, the hallway wasn't there anymore. Instead of the carpeted corridor with its vintage photographs, I was staring into what looked like the same hallway but from a different time. The wallpaper was peeling, the carpet was rotted, and there were these dark stains everywhere. The lights were flickering, showing brief glimpses of figures standing at various points down the hall. Every time the lights flickered, they were closer. I slammed the door shut and pressed my back against it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The TV was still on, but now instead of static, it was showing footage of the room. My room, from different angles like security camera footage. But here's the thing, there were no security cameras in the room. And on the TV, I could see myself pressed against the door, but I wasn't alone. Standing behind me, visible only on the TV screen, was a woman in what looked like an old hotel maid's uniform. Her face, I can't even describe her face without getting chills. She was smiling, but her eyes were completely black, and her head was tilted at an impossible angle. I spun around, but of course there was nothing there, just the empty room. But when I looked back at the TV, she was still there, now standing right next to me, and she was reaching for my shoulder. The lights in the room started going crazy, flashing on and off faster than a strobe light. In the bursts of light, I started seeing more figures appearing in the room. Some were transparent, like classic ghosts, but others looked solid enough to touch. They were all dressed from different time periods. I saw a man in a 1920s suit, a woman in a 1950s dress, a kid in clothes that looked like they were from the 1800s. The whispers turned into screams. Not horror movie screams, but the kind of screams that come from real pain, real fear, the kind that stick with you. And beneath all the screams, I could hear something else, a deep, rumbling sound, like the building itself was growling. The furniture started shaking, not like in an earthquake, more like everything was vibrating with anger. The bed lifted off the floor a few inches, then slammed back down. The desk chair spun in circles. The drawers in the dresser started opening and slamming shut on their own. I tried to think logically, tried to find some explanation, but when the shadows on the walls began moving independently of any light source, I knew I was dealing with something beyond logical explanation. These shadows, they were forming into shapes I can't even describe. Things that shouldn't exist, that couldn't exist. The mirror on the wall cracked, forming a spiderweb pattern. And in each broken section, I could see a different scene playing out, all horrible things that had happened in this room over the years. I saw violence, death, and things I don't even have words for. Through all of this chaos, through all this insanity, I noticed something that made my blood turn to ice. There was a small notebook on the desk, the kind hotels provide for guests to take notes. As I watched, words started appearing on it, written by an invisible hand. "Welcome to room 408, Mr. Parker. We've been waiting for you." The handwriting changed with each word, like different people were writing it. And then, below that message, another line appeared, "You're not checking out." That's when I heard the sound that finally broke me. It was coming from the bathroom, a wet, dragging sound, getting closer and closer to the door. And under the door, I could see something dark spreading across the floor, moving towards me like living ink, that black liquid spreading from under the bathroom door. It wasn't water. It moved like it was alive, forming patterns on the floor. Not random patterns, but words in a language I didn't recognize. And as it spread, the room temperature dropped so low that frost started forming on the windows. I backed away until I hit the wall, but there was nowhere left to run. The door to the hallway had disappeared completely, just a solid wall where it used to be. I was trapped, and whatever was in the bathroom was about to come out. The bathroom door handle started turning, slowly, so slowly. I could hear the sound, like wet clothes being dragged across the floor, getting closer and closer. And then the door opened. Guys, I've tried so many times to describe what I saw, but words just don't do it justice. It was like looking at a hole in reality. The thing that came out of that bathroom wasn't a ghost, wasn't a spirit, it was something else entirely. It looked like a woman at first, that same maid I'd seen in the TV reflection. But as it moved into the room, its form kept shifting. One moment it was the maid, the next it was the man in the 1920s suit, then the child, then something that had never been human at all. The shadows in the room all moved toward it, like they were being pulled in. The whispers turned into this deafening chorus of screams and laughter and crying, all mixed together. And then it spoke. Its voice. Shudders imagine 1,000 voices talking at once. Some whispering, some screaming, all saying different things but somehow forming words I could understand. We've waited so long for someone like you, Parker. Someone who could tell our story. It reached out with what looked like a hand, but the fingers were too long, too dark, moving in ways fingers shouldn't move. The TV exploded behind me, sending glass everywhere. The mirror shattered completely. The notebook on the desk burst into flames. That's when I saw it, really saw it. In all the broken glass on the floor, in every reflection, I could see what this thing really was. And my mind couldn't handle it. You know how when you look at one of those optical illusions for too long, your brain starts to hurt? It was like that, but 1,000,000 times worse. I felt something warm running down my face and realized my nose was bleeding. The thing was getting closer, and with each step, more of the room seemed to decay around it. The wallpaper peeled away, the carpet rotted, the ceiling began to crack. It was right in front of me now. The air felt like acid in my lungs. My vision was starting to go dark around the edges. And then it said something that made everything else seem like a pleasant dream. Your audience is going to love this. Voice breaking. It knew. Somehow it knew I was going to tell this story. Like everything that had happened, everything that was happening, was just for this moment, just so I could share it with you all. I did the only thing I could think of. I closed my eyes, covered my ears, and started screaming. Not out of fear, but trying to drown out the voices, trying to hold onto my sanity. I screamed until my throat felt like it was bleeding, until I couldn't make any sound at all. And then I felt something grab my shoulders with impossible strength. As it lifted me off the ground, my eyes opened involuntarily, and I found myself staring directly into its face, or what passed for a face. What I saw in that moment, that's when everything went black. The last thing I remember was feeling like I was falling into something deeper than darkness itself. But what happened next, that's even harder to explain. I woke up in the hotel lobby. The morning sun was streaming through the windows, and Sarah, the front desk lady, was shaking my shoulder gently. According to her, they found me passed out near the elevator on the first floor at around 5 a.m. No one could explain how I got there. When I asked about room 408, Sarah's face went white. She tried to tell me that the Silver Pine Hotel doesn't have a room 408. In fact, She said the fourth floor has been closed for renovations for the past 3 years. But I know what I experienced. And I have proof. Pulls out phone. See this photo? I took it right when I entered the room, before all the crazy stuff started happening. It shows a normal hotel room, right? But look closer, in the mirror's reflection. See that figure standing in the corner? The one that looks like a maid? I didn't notice it when I took the photo. And that's not all. Shows another photo. This is my hotel receipt. Look at the room number, 408. But here's the really creepy part. Look at the date. The receipt is dated 1987, 38 years ago, but I was just there last month. I even tried to use my credit card to verify the date of my stay, but there's no record of any payment to the Silver Pine Hotel. It's like I stayed there, but also didn't. I did some research after that night. Turns out the Silver Pine has a history that goes back over 150 years. There are countless stories of strange occurrences, disappearances, and unexplained phenomena. But the most interesting thing I found was about room 408. In 1987, the same year on my receipt, there was a massive fire in the hotel. Started in room 408. According to the news reports, they never found the bodies of the guests staying in that room. The whole fourth floor was destroyed and later rebuilt, but room 408 was never reopened. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear those whispers. My phone battery still drains unexpectedly. And sometimes, when I look in mirrors, I catch glimpses of something watching me. That thing in room 408, whatever it was, I don't think it ever really let me leave. Shows arm. See this mark on my arm? It showed up the morning after. Looks like a handprint, right? But watch this. Pulls out UV light. Under UV light, you can see words forming around it. They change every day. But today they say, "Story's not over, Parker." I don't know if I'll ever understand what really happened that night in room 408. Part of me doesn't want to, but I do know one thing: if you're ever driving through Millbrook and see the Silver Pine Hotel, just keep driving. Some stories aren't meant to be told, and some rooms should stay closed forever. I think I need to end this video now. The whispers are getting louder, and my camera battery is almost dead. Just remember, if you ever find yourself in a hotel and things start feeling wrong, don't try to be brave. Don't try to figure it out. Just run. Because sometimes the real horror isn't in what you see, it's in what sees you.